So the next module we have is aircraft caution warning, and this ties this is hand in hand with indication systems. It's just an extension of indication. And so I kind of put them together. When you have your quiz on this, it'll be, this is module 4. We just finished module 3. Your quiz covers module 3 and 4. I just combine them into a single quiz. So earliest warning systems were all about feel and listening to the aircraft. Does it sound normal? Do things feel normal, right? Your controls were connected directly to the flight controls through cables and push-pull tubes and rods and torque tubes and stuff. As a mechanic, we had to look for things like structural damage, evidence of structural damage. You know, hard landing, are there buckles or, you know, issues in the spar or the wing? Evidence of things like heat, you know, did the engine get too hot? Well, it's turned blue, right? Looking for bluing and stuff like that, and et cetera. So those early warning systems were all those discrete instruments we looked at. We had some lights and sounds for specific items that, you know, we want to be able to grab attention. Low oil pressure, higher, you know, overspeed airspeed, right? You know, things like that. So we were given lights and sounds, bells, horns, lights, klaxons, all kinds of stuff like that. On your gauges, you had things like carrots. You see those little pointers, right? You had different bands, green bands, white bands, yellow bands, red, don't exceed, right? Maximum position pointers. So this one is your EGT. This little thing right here, you can move this yellow piece. If you move the yellow piece over, on some of these, as the white part moves, it moves it, or some of them you can set it as like a target. Okay. The aim for, yep. So, you know, we had stuff like that. That was old school back in the day. Transport aircraft have moved well beyond a lot of this stuff. They use some of them, but they're digital representations of them. We still get carrots that pop up, but the carrots are controlled by the ICAS system. So like engine max speed, or what's called power of the day on turbine engines, is very highly dependent on things like temperature, pressure, and those kind of things. And so the carrots will not always be in the same spot. They'll move automatically on the ICAS. Your target like takeoff setting will move based on temperature, pressure, you know, air density, those kind of things. So second generation, we looked at this earlier, had the ethos with the discrete, so still some discrete instruments. Still some discrete lights, but we added a lot more what are called oral warning systems. Those are your sounds, okay? Added more sounds. So we have visual warning systems. We have oral warning systems or sounds. We added what are called master caution and warning. Those are the red and or yellow lights that no matter what, if you have a warning, it lights up and it tells you, hey, you have a warning somewhere. You need to look for it. Usually that's accompanied by something like a triple chime. A caution usually is a master caution, and these are duplicated. You can see there's a set in front of the pilot, set in front of the co-pilot. Yellow, single chime, tells you somewhere there's a caution, you need to look for it. This plane also has something called a central warning panel, and that is, if you get a warning, this lights up red. There's a red light that comes on here, you know, so you have, right? And then it also is going to have a red warning, say, on whatever system it is that failed. Right? Or your low oil pressure, you know, you get a low oil pressure, your oil pressure gauge is going to show 0 or low, right? So that's called a central warning panel. It's a collection of lights right in their view. And actually on this one, if it's indicating something on the overhead panel, it's kind of in the top half and there's arrows on these that point up. And if it's something that would be like on the center pedestal, it's going to be kind of in the lower part and there's arrows that point down. Or if it's a low oil pressure, for the left engine, it'll be on the left side, pointing left, and if it's on the right side, it points right. So, you know, there's positional indication there, even though it's one big collection of lights. Yeah. No, it doesn't, because I've compressor stalled this before, and I know it does. Compressor stalls are pretty obvious. They shake the airplane. And you see it in your indications in other ways. You see like temperature fluctuations or RPM fluctuations. Power, yeah, torque. This is a turboprop, so torque fluctuation. But this had, you know, this had those master caution warning, it had a central warning panel. The other thing these allow you to do is when you get that, remember I said that red one does triple chime, it also prompts, it's a method of prompting the flight crew to acknowledge that they've seen it. And that is that light will stay on until you reach up and press it. And when you press it, then it silences it and it goes away. Okay. With a fire, the red warning one comes on and it's constant. It's a constant ringing. Like if there's a fire, we really want to get your attention. But if you need to start thinking about how are you going to fight that fire, what steps do you have to take, having a loud alarm going off in your ear is going to be counter to what you need to do, right? And so by pressing that button, it actually shuts the audible alarm portion off. The red stays on until you actually put the fire out. That's your feedback that the fire suppression system worked. But you don't want to be listening to alarm bells while you're trying to fight a fire or fix something. That was learned in things like 3 Mile Island nuclear accident in Chernobyl, where they had no way of silencing alarms, and you had people trying to figure out what's happening with a nuclear power station as it's melting down, and there's 100 different audible warnings sounding all at once. Makes it very chaotic, right? So the second generation was those master caution warning lights communicate the severity. You acknowledge the condition by pushing the light, and you clear the attention getting indication. So if the light's flashing, it stops it from flashing. If there's an oral warning, it shuts it off. If there's a bell or a klaxon, it stops it from sounding, or a horn. And both the pilot and co-pilot have the ability to do it. So that's those two buttons there. That central warning panel indicates the system, indicates the actual fault, severity based on color. Is it amber? Is it red? Is it white? Right? Directs the attention. So again, system names, arrows, etc. These are driven typically by dedicated computers that are powered off of the battery hot bus. We want this to be available no matter what happens to the aircraft. Right? Current generation are those ICAS and ECAM systems we discussed. So still use master caution and warning. You can't see it in this picture because it's dark. Messages appear on displays. The messages on the displays basically replace that central warning panel. It replaced all those lights. Now each of these lights is a message on our ICAS display. Severity, general description, severity, color, and list position. Reds and warnings are at the top, yellows are a little bit lower, whites and greens are at the bottom, and the newest thing pops up at the top of the list. When something new occurs, maybe you already have a warning, a new warning, it's going to be at the top of the list. They're not going to go in alphabetical order or anything like that. They're going to move and change with it. Okay, order of occurrence, top and most recent. The details then are on your system screens or on your engine gauges, right? So you get a hydraulic low pressure, you hit the hydraulic system page to see exactly what's going on in the hydraulic systems. It also a lot of times tells you which other systems you lost that were run by those hydraulic systems. So then those latest ones I mentioned in the previous lecture can display non-normal checklists and things like that. And these are redundant. Typically they have 2 or a lot of them have 3 computers that drive them. And they have several things. So some of these acronyms that you'll see, warning electronic unit, light driver unit. There's a lot of them. You don't need to memorize those, but I'm just telling you, you'll see these specialized computers. Each manufacturer calls them something different, but they all do kind of the same thing. Okay? They're all there to get your attention, to tell you what's happening, and to help you figure out what you have to do to correct whatever's going on. Okay? So I'm going to stop there. So there will